Welcome to Mac Bleu, where we introduce you to who is building Arizona, bringing you the people and businesses that shape the landscape around us. From economic development and developers, underwriters and lenders, architects and engineers, to the very builders and suppliers that bring it all together. For all things Mac Bleu, head to www.macandbleu.com and don't forget to subscribe on YouTube. Now let's join our host, JJ Levinsky.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Mac Bleu. I'm JJ Levinsky, your host, CEO and co-founder of Blue Wave. Today I'm lucky enough to have Marshall MacFarlane back. Rumor has it no one else wanted to be on the show, so he drew the short straw. No, Just kidding. Welcome back, Marshall. For those of you that don't remember, Marshall actually was our first guest when we had started using this production facility.
Yeah.
So we had been
broke the seal.
Yeah, we had been in communication, and he had wanted to come back on. And with all the different things that this young lad is doing, we thought it appropriate to kind of get back in the mix. So for those of you that don't remember or don't know Marshall, he's the operations manager at C3 Engineering, which is, Marshall, you go ahead. You tell everyone what C3 is.
Yeah, C3, and I had just started at C3, I think, when I came on your show last time. Yeah, exactly. So C3 Engineering is kind of a niche electrical engineering firm. We do everything revolves around safety, and that ties to NFPA 70E. So we have three main divisions. First is acceptance and maintenance testing. So when they build a new building, the electrical gear needs to be tested. We do that. We do maintenance testing, which is preventive maintenance of electrical gear and breakers and transformers and things like that. Power studies is our other division, which is short circuit coordination studies. And we do a lot of arc flash hazard analysis. Arc flash is a requirement now, mandated requirement. And we do a lot of arc flash studies for companies. And then finally, we do what we call NRTL, which is...
All these acronyms,
yeah. NRTL is the... Basically, it's a UL equivalent listing of equipment. So people have a misconception that UL is the only company that can list things. So people look on the bottom of their lamp or their computer or whatever, and they'll see a little UL tag. The same thing applies to electrical gear and control panels and things like that. And particularly with equipment that's coming in from other countries, we do a lot of manufacturing equipment that's come in from Taiwan or Korea or Italy or Czechoslovakia. Doesn't meet North American requirements. We can actually what we call relist that equipment or put a UL equivalent label on that equipment that the electrical inspectors will pass. We get a lot of business these days with the shortage of electrical gear, and
I would think that's a blossoming and lucrative business for you guys.
Yeah, we've had some GCs call us where, hey, the architect or whomever specified a new SES for the project, and
we can't get it for 80 weeks.
Yeah, it's going to be an 80-week delivery and a $250,000 hit. And is there anything you can do about it? And yeah, absolutely, you can test the heck out of your old stuff. If you had to modify it or replace everything in it, it's still cheaper than that with little lead time, and we bring it up to code and make sure that.
So I think that's a great lead in then, Marshall. Who's getting a hold of you? Is it the GCs, the engineers, the owners, the developers, supply chain, all the above, or
GCs and the electrical contractors, and they're often referred to by the AHJ or the authority having jurisdiction.
Yeah.
And the tricky thing is that we kind of deal with is even though this is code and all those things, it's enforced to varying degrees by the jurisdiction. So. We honestly tell people, hey, it has to meet these requirements. They may talk to their inspector, and he's like, I don't know anything about that, or no, you're fine. But some jurisdictions are very strict about it, and people need to keep in mind, regardless of the jurisdiction's enforcement of that, doesn't remove any liability as far as, if somebody get hurt on that equipment or something happened, there's still a liability component to that.
So do you think it's as much of an education piece a lot of times?
It's totally an education piece, yeah. And it's kind of like the same reason why OSHA has a general duty clause. There's still an employer's responsibility, and the jurisdictions, as we know, are dealing with all kinds of budget and manpower staff, shortages,
Right.
and they adopt, even though there's common codes, they adopt them, enforce them differently. So just like they do with the building codes. So we see some variability there.
So back to the macro part of C3, is your clientele mostly private, public, mix? How does it look?
It's a mix. One of the things that's changing or should be changed, for a long time, we felt that some of the commissioning we do, for example, should really be on on behalf of the owner. And a lot of times that got kind of dumped or value engineered out of the GCs and kind of landed in the ECs. But you're in a bit of it's not quite an ethical conundrum, but when the electrical contractor hires you and you're basically commissioning or testing their work, it's kind of an interesting dynamic. So, but just the way the budgets fall out for some of these projects and everything, a lot of times it's through the electrical contractor. We'd prefer it be through the owner or the general contractor, but it just depends on the situation.
What about the landscape of the valley with so much of the, chip-based manufacturing and how tech savvy we've become here in the valley? Is that put C3 in a unique position and you guys with kind of your market share?
Yeah, we're actually exploding. I started in August last year, and I think we've hired 8 or 10 employees since then, and probably going to hire that many again this year at least. We call it the great TSMC talent suck. Yeah. So there's so many companies in the valley that have pushed all their chips in on TSMC, legitimately.
Yeah, no pun intended.
Right. That we're picking up all the work that they would, some of these other companies would normally do. And everyone I've worked with, we've even gone into some areas we wouldn't normally go into or we haven't sold. We've done some construction management stuff, some more commissioning work than we anticipated because folks just can't find that help in the valley that they need. And, I talked to an architect, curiously, that had a walk-in customer.
Walk-in?
Yeah, they're building I don't think it's a chip plant, maybe some kind of fab plant, but they the firm that was recommended to them just simply didn't have the bandwidth to design their building. So they went to another firm, and they didn't have the bandwidth, and they were literally walking down the street of this other company, and they saw an architecture firm. They walked in and said, "Hey, this is what we need. We need somebody to help design our factory," and they were able to do that. So there's more and more of that going on. I think as the valley expands, I don't think the labor's keeping up with it necessarily.
What about, maybe I'm a little off on this one, but what about even the utility companies, the SRPs, APSs, even Tucson, whatever? Are they seeking even more outsourced help like companies like yours?
Yeah, absolutely. We've done some work with utilities and some of the requirements they put back on the owners. If there's if the owners had to drop the utility for some kind of work, the utilities are requiring that we do a special inspection or whatever to bring that back on, or a high pod or whatever
Right.
that looks like. A lot of that's driven by the utilities. We've also we do safety training with utilities. There's all kinds of work that we do with utilities. We've got calls from Tucson Electric Power customers, all kinds of stuff. So
go down that rabbit hole just a little bit as far as what is the unique position you guys have in that safety aspect of the electrical world? In other words, you guys are kind of more of an engineer, but yeah, why are you dabbling in safety, or how does that chemistry work? Because I think most people listening or watching would go, well, geez, Marshall, why isn't a safety company or working with ADOS or something like that? Just help the audience understand why you guys are in that vertical.
Yeah, sure, and that's a great question. And the fact of the matter is that all 3 divisions of our company revolve around safety and conformity, which ultimately leads back to NFPA 70E and OSHA, and we're kind of an expert in that field. So we're the ones who help teach electrical contractors how to be safe, or what the newest NFPA 70 requirements are. We even help the utilities with that. So we're kind of the SMEs when it comes to working around electricity and teaching that kind of safety work. So we can do we can customize training to their sites. We can whatever they need, we can do that.
Now, are you guys just in Arizona, or have you branched out?
Around the world. We've done jobs in Guam and Alaska and all.
But is this your headquarters or not?
Our headquarters are in Chandler. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Have you had to do some traveling?
I haven't, no, luckily. So I'm chained to my desk.
Yeah.
But the other guys are doing.
This grumpy old Canadian said no way.
Right, that's the true story. You saw right through that one. Yeah. I know some of the travel the guys haven't enjoyed, but some of it we've had folks go to Japan and some pretty cool places too.
So again, most people don't. Marshall wears about 27 hats, so we'll switch off a C3 and go over to IFMA.
Sure.
Which, go ahead, tell what that acronym is.
Yeah, so IFMA is the International Facilities Management Association, and
you've played a vital role for a long time.
Yeah, I don't know about vital, but I played a role.
Come on, vital.
Okay, sure.
The cog in the wheel.
Yeah, exactly. The Phoenix chapter is one of the largest and most active chapters in the world, and I've just, as of July 1st, finished my 2-year reign as president, my reign of terror, as some people may call it.
Were there term limits?
Yeah. Apparently, if I wait long enough, I can go back through again.
Oh.
But they cut it off at 2. So, and I didn't take it personally. I don't think I was the first one that they did that
I
to.
know. So, in your tenure, what? Let's talk about some of the highlights or challenges or where it's going.
Yeah, I tell people that it was more challenging than I expected. It was more enjoyable than I expected. It was humbling. My 2-year term started, and so we did the whole, and I hate the word, but we did the pivot thing, kind of the cornerstone of our chapter activities is a monthly meeting that we have a different topic every month that's, that has some appeal or usefulness to facilities managers. And we had to toy around with that, when we weren't allowed to gather anymore, or even if we were allowed to, but there was still that hesitancy of people to come out. So we offered online. We offered that online. We did, the Zoom thing, and that worked very well. Our numbers didn't go down significantly. We were one of the few chapters in North America that our finances stayed up, our membership stayed up, our engagement stayed up. So
not bad.
And I don't take any credit for that. We have some awesome committees in our chapter, but. Yeah, we did it. We did the hybrid thing for a while. We tried, mixed meetings where some people were online and some people were live, and then eased back into the regular kind of realm of meetings where we do it, in person again now. So,
what was the coming out of 2020, and that whole thing? What was the key to that sustainability? Was it because of the demographic of what's going on in the valley with all the, no pun intended, but the facilities, with these growing facilities and how big they are and this management? And I'll even go a little bit deeper. When you look at the capital behind a lot of these holding companies, whether it be REITs, Wall Street, whatever, it just seems that if through my own purview is that a lot of these management companies really, they're great at the lease execution and managing that, but as far as managing the asset, they need help. So were you seeing that a lot of that growth was attributable to, like, hey, we need an organization, and IFMA fills that bill?
Yeah, absolutely. And IFMA became a great peer-to-peer resource for folks, that needed, because we were all navigating the CDC recommendations and the this and that, and for example, at that time I was employed with the city of Gilbert, the town of Gilbert, as their facilities manager, and we were spending tens of thousands of dollars a month for extra cleaning, and the parks. I oversaw the parks at that time, and just reacting to every governor's kind of issuance, which came out, I think on Thursdays. We'd have to get our legal's interpretation of that and turn that around and have an operational plan by Friday morning, whether we were, unsealing the park or sealing the park or extra cleaning, whatever that looked like. So, and this is something I'm kind of passionate about. I could talk about this for more than an hour, but the facilities management as a profession has really started to come of age in the last 2 or 3 decades. And that's for a couple reasons, and it started out as often your facilities manager was kind of the best handyman you had, or the best, the handiest guy, or the person who'd been there the longest, that knew where all the buttons were and all.
Where all the skeletons were in the closet.
And as buildings have become more sophisticated, that's changed significantly. And one of the things that's come out of that is that, for most organizations, the three biggest kind of expenses are the property, the utilities, and the personnel. And facilities management touches two of those directly, and now the third one, there's all kinds of data showing, workplace comfort and employee control over environment and health, and so there's that aspect of it where we're just kind of coming of our own. But one of the things we found, facilities managers really, that was their opportunity to shine, and most facilities managers capitalized on that because organizations needed all this stuff all of a sudden that they hadn't needed before. We had to set up queuing for buildings offering services. We had to have stanchions and 6-foot stickers and all that kind of stuff. We had to provide extra cleaning. We had to provide all those things. So in 2020, in those times, all these things that operationally facilities managers are good at, whether it's cleaning or protocols or rules or security and those kind of things, we were kind of Johnny on the spot to implement all these things for companies because now management was well embroiled in those responses to that. And they're like, well, how are we going to do all this? And we're like, well, this is what we do anyway, kind of. So it was a nice opportunity. It was a terrible time, of course. It was a nice opportunity to shine.
So to bring a good explanation and segue into, okay, so we come out of 2020 and this kind of hidden gem that you guys were always had at your disposal.
Right.
Now what is IFMA doing in a proactive way to then spawn this into the next generation?
So there's a huge, and it's not a debate, it's a
conversation.
Conversation's a great way to put it. Society, at least in North America, went through this a couple of phases where first, everybody can work from home. We've proved that now, and those years showed, for companies that were hesitant to let people work from home, they had to let people work from home. So they worked through a lot of those issues where, hey, we can monitor employee performance from home, and they're not, But then it kind of rebounded, and employees started reporting back that they're missing that human interaction. You're working from home and I'm not. I talk to the boss in the hallway. By all intents and purposes, we have equal qualifications. Right. Who's going to get sent on the course or get the promotion or whatever? And it's not through any favoritism per se. It's just that I'm in front of the boss more, So, and people were missing that human interaction, even introverts like myself who were happy the first year and a half to be away from people were, hey, I kind of miss Chuck, or whatever that. So then it rebounded away from we can all work from home to, well, we need this. So the general consensus, and obviously it's we only have 2 years of data, so a lot of it remains to be seen, but is that there's a predominant thought that, hey, we don't need buildings like we used to, at least not in the same way, shape, and form, because a building is expensive to build, it's expensive to maintain, and all those kind of things. So a lot of the conversation steers towards, well, we still need space, but it's going to change.
Right.
And now, unless it's a specialized space, like maybe an attorney's firm or a call center, or that has a specific need for people to be there, a lot of companies are taking the hybrid approach and that kind of thing. So if you look at, say, 75 or 50% of companies are taking this hybrid approach, well, now you need a facility that you can bring people together, do the kind of the forming, storming, and norming portion of a project, send everyone back home, everyone stays in touch through Teams or Zoom or whatever that looks like, then they reconvene for the project celebration or the company meetings and that kind of thing. So You're looking at buildings that have hot desks and hoteling spaces, some spaces where they can have bigger celebrations and that kind of thing. But probably in many of the cases, we don't need great big office buildings like we used to. The kind of complexity of that in the facilities management world is now you don't just have your FM team, that look after landscaping and custodial. Now they're more of a joint team with HR and IT and all this kind of these other departments have to work in unison because now we have employees working at home. And what does that look like? When 2020 came around and we sent employees home, HR says, hey, can we deliver chairs to people at home and monitor? I'm like, well, we're not set up to, we don't have the resources to do that. And to my knowledge, a lot of this stuff is still yet to be litigated, but what responsibility does a company have to make sure that you have an ergonomic workspace at home, or, those kind of things. If I get up from my desk after a Teams meeting, go outside and have a cigarette or a coffee or whatever, and I trip over my dog, what's
that a work comp claim?
Right, yeah, what's a workplace injury now and what's not, so. And how do companies enforce those kinds of things that, you're not sitting on a milk crate in your garage with a piece of plywood on your lap, that's your workspace, So there's still a lot of it to be worked out, and I'm sure it'll go through a couple more iterations before we kind of land on what the new thing is. But really, I think, and this is a bit of a metaphor because facilities management hasn't been a profession for that long, but I don't personally think since the invention of electricity, probably the profession, if you want to call it, has gone through this type of change because it's the physical space has changed. There's a tremendous emphasis now on sustainability. There's a tremendous emphasis on workplace health. All these things are changing now. Just of kind of when the profession was getting to a spot where they knew the routine and they knew the pitch and knew how to explain their value to the C-suite, so to speak. Now everything's been embroiled up again. So
let's go.
There comes a time when dreams become a reality, when you see your vision materialize into a true work of art. And the only way to get there is to choose a general contractor who shares that same vision and knows how to bring it to life. At Blue Wave, we aren't so big that we've forgotten where we've come from, and we aren't so small that we can't care for your projects regardless of their size. When your vision deserves safety, perfection, timeliness, and expertise in order to become a reality, trust Blue Wave to get it done right the first time.
Let's explore a few things that you kind of brought up there. We had touched on a few of these the last time we were on, but now I want to. A lot has changed since.
Sure has.
And one of the things is let's go back to the change, and I want to talk about more like cognitive to behavioral change. Mm-hmm. So, talk to me about how the FM world, how we're tracking and adjusting and managing around the behavioral change versus just those cognitive learning environments. Because I think you touched on it, whether you knew it or not, about maybe 5 minutes ago. So how through either through your eyes or through IFMA's eyes are you guys able to ascertain that information and then teach or nourish people to have that comprehension?
Yes.
And I think you understand what I'm saying.
I think so. So IFMA internationally has become a great research institute and a repository for white papers and research, and some of the leading thinking is coming out of that group in regards to whether it's workplace health or what the new building looks like or mm-hmm. those kinds of things. And I think as we kind of go down this road, it's evolving, obviously, because we don't have the data to design the perfect office anymore because nobody knows what it is.
What's changing so fast? Too.
Right. But I think the thing that's really coming of age, I don't know if this addresses your question specifically. One of the things that's fascinating, well, there's two things. Sustainability is one. And the other thing now is the data is out there about workplace health and happiness.
Yep. That's where I was going.
Yeah, and how those are linked to productivity. And then you go down all these rabbit holes of retention mm-hmm. and those kinds of things. But a book I read, and facilities management is not a particularly exciting field. A couple of years ago, I was at World Workplace, which is IFMA's international kind of conference. And there was a speaker there that was from the Harvard School of Business, Harvard School of Public Health, I'm sorry. And he wrote a book along with another professor from the Harvard School of Public Health. So they weren't facilities managers. And he did a presentation on, among other things, indoor air quality. Mm. And he made the point that And I liked him so much I bought his book. And the book was, relatively speaking, riveting in FM terms. It's probably the most compulsive or comprehensive and impactful book I've read regarding facilities management in 20 years. So, but humans are indoor creatures now, and we spend 90% of our time indoors. And he made the statement that by the time you're 80 years old, you spent 72 years indoors. And he said, which I thought I still think about, he says, your building manager probably has more of a direct impact on your overall health than your physician does.
Or yourself.
Right. And
that's kind of eye-opening.
It is. And he expounded on that with a great example. One of the things when we talk about air exchanges and filtration and that kind of, just indoor air quality, to start with, ANSI sets those standards, and those are minimum standards. And ANSI, because it's a consensus standard in a group, is very slow to change those standards. And most buildings are set up, designed, programmed in their building management systems and maintained to meet those minimum standards.
Minimum is the key.
Right. Do we use minimum standards for water quality or for any other health standard, right?
Well, sometimes we do.
Sometimes we do, yeah. But ideally,
you'd be
no.
discounting it if we said otherwise.
Right. Yeah. So that's pretty cool stuff to me. And I bought his book, and his book expands on things beyond indoor air quality to off-gassing of plastic products and carpets and right. all kinds of things. But there's data now that shows, and I'll give a great example, the bane of most facilities managers' existence is temperature calls, because you're hot and I'm cold, we're in the same room, there's one thermostat. So there's data now that shows every individual human, and I may get the numbers off a little bit, but has a 4-degree band that is their ideal temperature to work in.
Okay.
And there's a measurable decrease in productivity when they go outside of that band.
So if you can steer it all towards the median or mean of that 4 degrees.
Yeah.
The problem is getting everyone in that same bandwidth or wavelength.
Exactly. And that, because we have numbers now related from productivity to profit, it's easy to measure. It's easy to measure, but it's also easy to make the argument that the more controllable you make your work environment, the more return on that investment it is.
Bingo.
You know what I mean? So maybe individualized thermostats are way out of the question for us, but there's certainly an argument to be made to have more control than one thermostat.
So let's go down again, since you were on last time. We've had a number of guests, and I've kind of started taking, not that, I have a bias because I'm the host. I can do whatever the hell I want.
Exactly.
But I want to talk about like digital twins, AI, how that's impacting things, because I'm curious to see where IFMA's at this. So, the advancement in AI and digital twins just day over day, week over week, month over month is incredible. So we take a new building, let's take an office environment, call it a Class A office building with, a couple hundred employees. Technically now we could create a digital twin for every employee, get all their biometrics, pattern that all into the AI to have that put into the controls that goes right back to the RTUs, and whether that's on the refrigeration side, air exchanging, all of it. That was science fiction a while ago. Now it's here, it's now. And where's IFMA in adapting and being proactive with all of those kind of controls? Yeah. And data collection. I mean, I realize IFMA is not responsible for this.
No.
But at the same token, they probably have to be the catalyst for all these things.
They are, and to be honest, digital twinning and the AI stuff is probably the least proficient of my many talents and areas of knowledge.
Yeah, but you get it though.
Yeah, absolutely. And IFMA has a whole. They have councils within IFMA, and they have a whole technology council, which is very active, and it works with other groups. And they have a significant amount of data on digital twinning, and they're developing the data and white papers on AI and all that kind of stuff. And
because it's not only digital twinning the asset, it's digital twinning the people, and the processes
and the behavior.
Yeah.
Which is really what everything comes down to, right? It's human behavior at the end of the day.
Because with the speed of computing, if you can run a billion scenarios through a computer, you can circumvent a lot of problems.
You can,
Yeah.
and I think the digital twinning and the AI and those other technology things will leapfrog over the ability to design the controls and the systems to accommodate those. So now that we have that information, now the controls have to catch up. So it's going to be very interesting, kind of this leapfrogging effect, And if companies take this seriously, and with the environmental, the ESG, the environmental and sustainability, and there's a corporate kind of responsibility effort afoot with many companies where they have this ESG score, which
Correct.
is which takes into account their sustainability and employee environment and all those kinds of things. And I think that there's matter of fact, I may mention it towards the end. See, our company is working now. They have a facilities manager on staff. We're working on a pretty specific project to talk about some of this stuff. But it's really cool. IoT was a big thing, and so now you have a fridge that can sense its filter and orders its own filter on Amazon or whatever that looks like. So when you start integrating those things into facilities management, it's really cool. And the thing with the data, so now we have the data to support that, sick days, all this stuff that are tied to off. It's amazing. But now
that'll just go to a 3D printer in the back and it'll print your own filter.
Exactly, yeah. But now that we have the AI and the digital twinning, and we can compute so fast with this stuff. I hadn't worked much with AI, and I'm working on this project with our IT and some developers, and we were working on this software that we're building, basically a CMMS software built by a facilities manager instead of somebody who doesn't know anything about facilities. And for example, he typed in, he had his AI thing pulled up, and the 5 most common types of work orders, and it.
In a millisecond.
And they're, for the most part, they're right. I had to tweak them a little bit, but they were mostly right, and it was just dumbfounding at some point. So So if, and I'm not a IFMA salesperson, but they do have this knowledge base where there's a price for members and a price for non-members, obviously. Okay. But there's a whole technology component of that's bringing out, just as fast as they can spew them out, white papers on the digital twinning, and they have a lot of. I'll give him a shout out, Ted Ritter, if you want to find him he's a member of our chapter and a fellow. He's very active in the Technology Council, and he's always doing webinars and panel discussions that are just exactly that stuff. So.
There comes a time when dreams become a reality, when you see your vision materialize into a true work of art. And the only way to get there is to choose a general contractor who shares that same vision and knows how to bring it to life. At Blue Wave, we aren't so big that we've forgotten where we've come from, and we aren't so small that we can't care for your projects regardless of their size. When your vision deserves safety, perfection, timeliness, and expertise in order to become a reality, trust Blue Wave to get it done right the first time.
I think, we talk about it all the time. You better just embrace it and figure out where you're going to go within this, because it's not going to go away.
No.
Okay. And with that, I think back to how we were talking earlier, is when you look at who owns most of these assets anymore, it's no longer mom and pops. It's huge holding companies. They're going to leverage the hell out of it because they want to squeeze every arbitrage they can out of that, and they rightfully should.
Right.
For the millions and millions and millions of dollars that are being put out there, to decrease that and make these buildings better, make the employees healthier, blah, blah. I mean, we could go on and on. That cycle, it's just, every time you unwind it, it keeps getting more and more unique as far as how you can give benefits to everyone by leveraging the technology. Now, coming back to the human capital side, one of the topics I know we wanted to bring up today was the Global Workforce Initiative. So touching back on more of the human capital, fire away.
Yeah, so one thing that IFMA identified a couple years ago was there's because it's a relatively young profession, and let's face it, high school guidance counselors haven't been talking to kids in high school, but hey, you should be a facilities manager someday. They just haven't. So there's a in the next 5 years or so, probably 50 to 65% of us are going to retire out of the profession. So they identified this looming shortage of professional facilities managers. So they've created the Global Workforce Initiative is an initiative to make FM kind of a career of choice and to educate not just the young folks, but the educators on it.
Okay.
And there's an ambassador component. In the last 2 years, I've talked to educator groups. I've talked to guidance counselors. I've talked to high schools. We've met with community colleges, universities, and that kind of thing. Because the IFMA Foundation, which is the charitable arm of IFMA, and they usually focus on scholarships. But one thing they've also kind of taken on is this Global Workforce Initiative, along with IFMA, has created really a turnkey solution for this problem. And I was kind of proud myself, and the executive director of the foundation met when I worked at Gilbert with the mayor, had an adult education group, and that group represented educators from high school right up through the universities.
Okay.
And we gave our presentation and talked about IFMA's solution to that. And after Mayor Daniels approached me, and she said, we've had a lot of groups come to us with kind of the same problem. Yours is the most comprehensive solution we've seen. So basically that involves an ambassador kind of component where we train ambassadors, we provide an ambassador toolkit to go out into the community, whether that's job fairs, whether that's guidance counselors, whether it's career days or whatever that looks like, just to educate people about facilities management. There's also I don't want to call it recruitment, but there's an effort. We're approaching trade schools and the community colleges and the universities because we have accredited degree programs from 2 years all the way through master's programs.
And was that always like that? The accreditation?
Yes, but it
just
has
underexposed.
Underexposed.
Yeah.
A few years ago, ASU
so
had
it's changing the optics, really.
Yeah, and we're excited because it's and I've coined the phrase, we can see in the house, but we can't find the door. So
apropos.
Yeah. So in Arizona, and we've been at this a couple years, and one of my people say, what are you going to do now you're not president? Well, I've got a couple initiatives. One's the GWI, which is very important to me, and the other's the IFMA's developed a military community, which
nice.
which which is near and dear to my heart, and it was developed on an international level, and it's not, I wouldn't say fallow, but it's not very active right now. So I want to represent Phoenix well in the military community. But the Global Workforce Initiative, we've been pecking away at for a couple of years. But now that I'm out of my presidency, I can really focus on that with the foundation. But in California, it took off. This kind of effort took off through the community college system. In Denver, it was very successful, but it was through Denver's economic development department.
It's a completely different avenue.
In New York State, it was through an adult education and retraining 501c3 organization. So it's taken a different path everywhere it's been successful so far. And what we ran into a lot, particularly coming out of 2021 and 2022, was because there was a lot of retraining dollars floating around and those kinds of things. Places that had the dollars didn't have the infrastructure to adopt the training, and places that had the training didn't have the dollars. And it was kind of this chicken and egg thing everywhere we ran into. So we've talked to state apprenticeship, we've talked to big companies about mentoring programs and those kind of things. So there's a ton of interest, and I think or hope, fingers crossed, that ASU used to have a master's program in facilities management, and then it kind of dwindled down to a focus. The word just left me, but
the concentration.
A concentration. Yeah. Thank you. And then it kind of disappeared altogether. Now they have some FM classes, but we have this fall. Actually, we're starting at the Gateway Community College. There's going to be 2 cohorts of what we call an FM Essentials class. it'll be a non-credit class, but the outcome of that class for the students, and it's a great one for adult learners. It's a great one for students. It's a globally recognized certificate in FM Essentials, which is a high-level view of facilities management. For students, it's a great tack on, and we've approached the community colleges. If you have I want to say kid, but if you have a young person graduating with a technical degree in welding or air conditioning, it's a great add to that to kind of get their foot in the door for facilities management. Or if you have somebody with the same 2-year associate's degree or whatever in business, this makes a nice add to their business. So, but what we think is, obviously the community colleges feed the undergrad programs feed the grad programs. We're talking to a university in Gilbert that's shown some interest in an undergrad program. So we're hoping it has a domino effect. Once we kind of knock the first one over, then the interest and the mechanisms will develop in these other avenues. So we're pretty excited about that.
Good. Well, thanks for sharing all that. What is there anything else on the IFMA front you wanted to share today?
Yeah, just we have an incoming president. We're pretty proud of her. It's her name is MJ Gamati, and she's the prototypical IFMA story, and we're so proud and excited to have MJ.
Share it.
Yeah, she started out in the student chapter, and then she was a young professional. She's from India, so she obviously is a lady. She's not a Caucasian. She meets all. She's the exact example of diversity that we want in the field, and she's such a success story. She has an amazingly sharp mind. She's very enthusiastic. She's always been so we're really excited to see what MJ does now that she has the reins, and again, she's the epitome of the IFMA success story, and we're just really excited about that. So, and our golf tournament's coming up. The IFMA golf tournament, if you've never been, you got to make it. It's probably the best one in the valley, and I'm a little biased, but it's pretty fun. And then again, I'm going to be taking on the past president. Usually doesn't have many duties other than succession planning for the elections and any projects assigned by the president and the board. But I've made a commitment to the GWI and the military community, so I'm looking forward to it.
Well, good. Congratulations, and thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
I'd be remiss if I didn't go down again. Marshall wears 2,000 hats. So, any news or updates on what you're doing out in the outdoor world?
Yeah, I think I talked last time. I've been a freelance writer and editor since high school. So I used to set the type on the old, on the printing presses. I used to do that. That's how I got into the industry. So, but primarily in outdoor writing and editing. I've written for print and electronic and websites. I've done ghostwriting. I haven't written a book yet.
Come on,
I
slacker.
might. Yeah, I might. I don't know.
You're still young. Come on.
Young's a pretty relative term, but I've been writing more technical stuff lately for IFMA, and some trade-related stuff, just spreading my wings a little bit. My website has slowed down a little bit, just the ebbs and flows of life, and I haven't been doing as much hunting and fishing as I used to, but I still enjoy it, and I did redo my site last year, so it looks a little fresher, but content's a little stale, that's all.
Oh, good. Well, Marshall, thanks for coming on again today, really highlighting these things. It was fun to talk about some technological advances since you had started with me, last year, so just appreciate your time, and for those of you wanting to reach out to Marshall directly, you can either get a hold of him through IFMA or, again, his employer, C3 Engineering here in town, and they're global, of course. But thanks again for coming on.
Thank you. Appreciate it.